The webinar is titled Using Drones in the North Dakota Oilfields. This is being presented by Alan Christensen, Field Inspector with the Oil and Gas Division of North Dakota's Mineral Resources, who will discuss the issues, considerations, and uses of drones in the regulatory environment. So welcoming you to today's webinar. Top Energy Training is an educational consortium composed of the Colorado School of Mines, the Pennsylvania State University, and the University of Texas at Austin. TOPCORP is our flagship program with hundreds of regulators and policymakers completing the online 4-module curriculum of basic petroleum technology training and classroom and field training. TOPCORP's mission is to train regulatory and policymaking personnel involved in oil and gas development. Our goal is to make sure that your time spent completing our professional development training is an efficient investment in keeping you at the top of your game professionally. TOPCORP Oil and Gas Energy Training is well known among oil and gas regulators and policymakers in North America. The success has brought many additional training opportunities as TOPCORP is working to extend our professional development programs to include the development of curriculum to cover all aspects of onshore, offshore oil and gas operations, as well as expanding our international footprint. All of this effort is a result of support TOPCORP receives from many participating partners, and we're grateful to have the support from industry, environmental NGOs, and foundations who share in our mission of science-based educational outreach to oil and gas regulators. Today's webinar is offered as part of TOPCORP's professional development educational training for oil and gas regulators and those interested in the field. Please use the chat pod to introduce yourselves. And for any logistical questions, we ask you to please use the Q&A pod and we'd ask you to use the Q&A pod for questions for Alan anytime throughout his presentation. We'll hold the question till the end of the webinar and Alan will have an opportunity to respond. We'll work through as many questions as we can before we need to wrap up at the end of an hour. This webinar is being recorded, so if you missed something you'd like to see again, or you have a colleague that's unable to join us today, we'll have the webinar available for later training or later viewing on our TOPCORP website. Should be a week to 10 days, and we'll have that up there. So with that, at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Alan Christensen. Alan's a 2009 graduate of Minot State University with a BS in geology. He has been a petroleum engineer with the North Dakota Industrial Commission's Department of Mineral Resources since October 2011. Alan was drone certified in 2017 and retook the recurrent exam in October 2019 and has been instrumental to integrating drone usage into their regulatory agency. Alan, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and if you could share your presentation now, we'll hand it over to you, and it's all yours. Welcome, and thank you for being with us today.
Great. Thank you. All right, well, I just want to welcome everyone here to this TOPCORP webinar, Drone Applications at the North Dakota Department of Mineral Resources. As John gave me a nice, wonderful intro, I am Alan Christensen. I work for the Oil and Gas Division here as a field inspector or a petroleum engineer. So going forward, I'd like to discuss the history of why our division, the Department of Resources and the Oil and Gas Division, decided to implement drones in North Dakota. It started off with the North Dakota Geological Survey, and of course with us as well too. They were looking at updating our landslide imagery in our GIS program, and we were asked during this time as well as the field inspectors out in North Dakota to look for new recent areas with landslides and stuff like that, and report back to them to be able to look into it using stereoscope imagery from the 50s, which obviously is out of date, and using Google Earth images and stuff like that. So, you know, stuff that they couldn't do with that, they would actually hire planes to be able to go out and fly certain sites like that. So that became very, very expensive, a couple $1,000s per flight. So they started looking at other ways, cost-effective ways to use to be able to, for our employees to be able to fly drones. So official geologists with the Geological Survey started looking into it, researching, and started for the regulations, and they were the first ones to actually purchase a drone and start using it. So after they got he became licensed. They started using it, and then our permitting department started looking at stipulations as far as for before we permitted an oil and gas location if it was located in a landslide area. Now, why do we start looking at the landslide areas itself as an issue? So a particular operator in North Dakota started having downhole issues due to a landslide, roughly around the 200 to 300 foot range. So we started looking at that due to that reason, because those wells are going to be no longer to be able to be used or producing anymore. So they had problems with running tools downhole. So with that, we started looking at too before when we get the application packet, looking at where the site's at, if it's located in a landslide area. And that was also a cause for us to start looking at updating our landslide stuff, because the stuff we had on our GIS system needed to be updated. And with that, roughly in like the spring of 2017, summer of 2017, the oil and gas division, the field supervisors in each office started asking for volunteers to look at getting licensed to fly the drones. I am myself and Doug Dolanuk, who also had attended TOPCORP back in a couple years ago in Pennsylvania, volunteered to look at become licensed. And so in 2017, around the end of September is when I passed my exam. I roughly have about 20 hours of flight experience. And then as the regulations state, you have to take the exam every 2 years. So I just retook my recurrent exam in 2019. I do have to say, Doug and I both thought the recurrent exam was a lot more difficult than the original exam. But looking at DMR as a whole, we have roughly about nine pilots in the DMR, 2 in the geological survey. We have 2 in Bismarck, 2 in Dickinson, that might be myself and Doug. 1 person currently in Williston. We're looking at getting another inspector licensed to fly up there. And we have 2 currently that are working on being licensed in Minot. What the test and the exam covers of the federal regulation, it's in short, it's called Part 107, but in total, it's the 14 CFR Part 107. Just to go over some of the basic laws with that, and I see we have some people from Canada, so I'm not sure if you guys have the same regulations up there or not, but for us down here in the United States, it's 400 foot above ground level is the maximum altitude you can fly at. You have to stay within visual line of sight, and no nighttime flying. Now, the no nighttime flying doesn't really affect us that whole lot, because we're not going to see a whole lot as far as for what we're using them for at night. There is no regulations in North Dakota that we have to contact a landowner. We do try to attempt it just for curiosity, but anyways, moving on, for just so we can attempt to get a hold of them so they know that we're there. We have had landowners come before and approach us when we've been flying, but they've been more happy and just seeing what we're doing and have asked for the pictures themselves. So we do have a couple United States Air Force bases in North Dakota we have to be aware of. The one in Grand Forks is nowhere near the oil fields, so we don't have to worry about the Grand Forks one, but the one north of Minot, the Minot Air Force Base, is in close location to some of the wells we have in Glenboro, North Dakota, which is north and east of there. We do, if you're flying around any airports that have restricted airspace, if it's large enough, it will have restricted airspace where you have to contact the air traffic control tower to get permission to fly. A lot of our smaller airports here in North Dakota, it's just Class E airspace from 700 foot above, so we don't have to worry about getting pre-approval to fly. And as you know, North Dakota isn't very sparsely populated, so a lot of it's Class G airspace, so it's uncontrolled airspace, so we don't have to worry about that at all. So how did we study up on the drone as far as for the drone exam? We used an online program called Drone Launch Academy. I'm not going to try to be a salesman for them, but it's going to sound like it. But it's online. It's very affordable. It costs about $150 to register. It's not a yearly subscription, which is very nice. You pay the $150. When I went to take the recurrent exam, I just logged back in and looked at the material, and at that time they actually updated and put a recurrent exam practice exam in there. So that was very nice to be able to do. The layout on it it's very simple. It's very user friendly. It has each section of the Part 107 and subsections in that, and it has at the end of each subsection there's a test. There's a lot of videos. There's a lot of pictures and that stuff. A lot of reading. It is something that it takes a long time to study. It took me, I estimate, 30 plus hours. I had a couple office days I used to study for the exam and read through the material. Several days at home at night looking through the material, because they want you to know stuff that airline pilots need to know. Just for example, some of the weather reports they have through the METAR reports and the TAF reports is not, it doesn't just tell you where the cloud level is, it's all coded. So each number, each letter means something. You have to be able to basically decipher that code, and which I thought was kind of a little on the high bar side of things, because I mean, with today's media going on the internet and be able to look at any type of weather media, you should be able to get what you need to be able to fly the drone. But that's just an example. I mean, it's not something that you can just go through it once lightly and take it. It was a fairly hard exam. So the type of drone that we purchased that we have at the DMR here is it's the Phantom 4 Pro. It's made by DJI. It's very affordable. It's roughly $2,000. You have to have a tablet to be able to operate it. We purchased iPads, so that was another additional $350. Not quite sure if you'd be able to run it with something cheaper like an Amazon Fire, but if you guys have state phones or stuff like that with iPhones, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to operate it that way too. We currently have 5 drones, 6 drones, and 2 in each, or 1 in each field office, and then we have 2 in the Bismarck office, and then an additional 1 for the Geological Survey. And I'll get to the reason why we have 2 in the Bismarck office. But the drone itself has a 20 megapixel camera and a 4K video, which is basically everything we need to use as far as for being able to do our inspections types that we wanted to do. It's very simple. It's very user intuitive. You know, today's days with the younger generations coming in the workforce, you know, a lot of people have played video games. If you've done that, you know, it's pretty simple to operate. You know, the baby boomer generation, I believe if you took it out and practice, it's very, very easy to be able to operate. It's very safe. It has a lot of safety features on there. The controller itself has multiple different modes you can go into. You have the safe mode, which we operate mostly into, because when you get in the air and you have any type of wind, it counterbalances for the wind and stuff like that. So if you have any windy days, you get up, you fly, and it stays in that position. Otherwise, if you go into the safe mode or sport mode, what happens there is it doesn't do anything. The safety features are turned off, and you fly up and you have any wind, it just floats down with the wind. So you have to do all that stuff yourself. So as far as, you know, going out and doing inspections, the safe mode's the best way to do it. There are some cons, like with anything, you know, and with any drone, I'm assuming wind and temperature that plays a fact into when you're going out and fly. I mean, obviously here in North Dakota, in the northern climate, we do have, you know, 4 seasons up here, sometimes only 2. Sometimes, like last year, we went from summer, winter to summer, or winter, summer, back to winter again, all within 4 months. So we typically don't fly. We set up a policy, so we typically don't fly when it's 32 degrees or below. Obviously, we don't want to fly when it's too windy. Temperature is very important, like I just stated. The battery life with the Phantom 4 Pro it's very susceptible. It just depends on the conditions you're flying in. I've had a battery only last 10 minutes, but on average, you know, if you go out when conditions are right, roughly around 15 minutes. So depending on what your department wants to use these drones for, what the size of these drones are for, or the size of the sites are for that you're going to use the drone for, it just adds, you have more batteries. It costs more money to have more batteries. Each drone we have in each field office, we have 4 batteries here in Dickinson. I believe all the other field offices have the same amount of batteries. So it's just an additional cost. And it takes time to switch out the batteries and fly back. Another con that we kind of discussed was the software that you can download when you buy the drone. It's a very basic software. There's nothing really too extravagant about it. It just does the basic functions. It gets you up, it flies, allows you to do the video, it allows you to take pictures. It allows you to operate all the safety equipment. So like I said, if you get anywhere near a fixed object, it beeps at you and it stops you within 4 feet of it. Other than that, some of the other con was there's no lat and longitude on it, like real-time lat and longitude while you're flying. So if you're trying to locate something with GPS coordinates for the lat and longitude, you have to spend time kind of doing your background legwork as far as looking for topography that you can match with where that site is at. So that was kind of a con with that. Plus, you know, and it was free, so you get what you pay for. We did do some research, and we did find another DJI app that was free. That was DJI Pro, and that one there it was nicer. It had the GPS coordinates on it. It also had a program on there to where you could program waypoints into it, to where you set the altitude, you set where the waypoints are at, you put the GPS, the lat and longitude in there, and you get on location, you launch, you fly, you hit go, it goes there, and you're able to stop it and take your pictures. It was very nice. It worked very well for a while, but like I said earlier, we did have some issues with that software. Doug was out flying it at one time. I think it was this past spring. He lost connectivity, the program crashed, and usually when that happens, the drone's just supposed to come fly back to home. It didn't do that. It just took a nosedive to the ground and crashed. So at that point, they were flying around some hill country. Thank goodness they weren't over, rough terrain to where you wouldn't be able to find it. So they were able to find it, and it was cracked. It was pretty badly damaged. None of the internal components were damaged, so we were able to repair it. But in the meantime, we purchased an additional drone, so we're using that one as a backup as of right now. So another con for the DJI Phantom 4 Pro is it's no longer in production. We just bought these 2 years ago, and they're no longer making them. So the money that we invested into these Phantom 4 Pros, when we upgrade our drones, probably the equipment will not be functional with the new drones. So that's just another con with what's going on with these drones. And then plus two, they are still upgrading the software, but at what point are they going to stop upgrading the software to where we're going to have to update our drones? So let's get into somewhat of what we use our drone for. So like I stated before, with the land sites, the program started basically because of pre-site inspections. So were we able to, before the permitting department actually permitted the wells, they would look at if it was located in a landslide area. If it was, they sent out a drone request out to the field offices for us to go fly them. And here you can see on this picture here, we got some landslides up on the top of the screen. You can also, while we're out there flying, we can look at drainage issues because we also have regulation in North Dakota that you can't block any natural drainages. So if we were to do this with walking, this would increase our time for being out there. We'd probably be out there 2 or 3 hours just trying to climb on that topography there. There's other issues we have as far as safety concerns, slip, trips, and falls, so hiking up around the ridge up there and looking at all that stuff. And then on top of that, getting in the drone and being able to fly above it and look at it, you just get another viewpoint and advantage to be able to look at it to make better decisions, whether the permitting guys decided to put any more stipulations on that location. Here's just another picture of like the type of topography we have with the Badlands in North Dakota. Several TOPCORP people that I met this past summer in August at the IOGCC conference here in Medora. I talked to several of you guys, got to go on a kind of a field trip through our Badlands here north of Medora, got to see it firsthand. Just for example, these Badlands here extend from Medora all the way up to Watford, all the way over to like Sakakawea, which is 60 miles east, roughly 60 miles east of Watford City. And a lot of the Badlands is in the core of our Bakken where a lot of the drilling's taking place. So we do get several pre-site inspections to have to go fly. Another use that we can use them for is we can use them for production. Current active production sites, we don't typically use them a whole lot way, but we have used them. Just for example, if for whatever legal litigation we end up taking over a site, it's useful to get up in the air, to fly the site, to see the surrounding area, see if there's any damage due to recent spills. And then on top of that, we can get a inventory of the equipment that's on location. It's more towards spills, but if we're flying a production site, it is another tool just to look at for spills, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. I threw drilling in here as far as for our format when we go out and drill, or not drill, but we go out and inspect a drilling rig. It's not really advantageous for us to take the drone out there to fly while we're doing an inspection. A lot of our inspections is talking with the company consultants that are out there and the directional hands and stuff like that, more downhole stuff, making sure they're legal. But it's depending on if laws change, regulations change, they all change. It may come up and pop up that, we might have to use the drones for drilling. And maybe some of the other states that are listening right now might have a reason to look at drilling rigs as far as for inspecting. I did use the drone once as far as a drilling rig being on location, but that was due to landslides. The company had spent quite a lot of money and time to remediate a hill that was sliding that they built the location on. And once they started drilling, the stuff that they fixed started sliding again. So it was requested that I'd go out there and fly it. So that's the only time I've really been on a site with a drilling rig as far as, flying with the drone. Another way We've used the drones, not so much in Dickinson, but up in the Williston District flooding. We have the confluence of the Yellowstone River and the Missouri River up there. If we get a lot of fast melting water coming down and the ice isn't off the rivers yet, and the ice breaks up and causes ice jams, we get a lot of water backed up and a lot of flooding. In the past couple of years, we've had that happen, and it's been a very good tool for the Williston inspectors to get up to fly to look at, to make sure there's no damage on the location, or if we get a report of damage, we can get out and go out and fly that and see the damage firsthand, take video, take pictures, and also it saves money for us as well, because we don't have to hire a plane to get up to go and fly it. Now, with the regulations to have to stay within the visual line of sight, there are some situations to where we still have to hire a plane to go out and fly because we have to stay within line of sight. So, for example, on that oil location that you see here on the picture, depending on where they're at, the drone's white, it's overcast out. I don't think they'd have been able to make it to that location without losing the sight of the drone. So at that point, you're able to still kind of see there's not a whole lot of flooding taking place in that location now, so that was good. But it's been a very good help for those folks up in Williston. Another, like I talked about earlier, use and advantage for the drones is spills. A lot of times, most of our spills are on locations inside containment, so you can drive up there and look at them. You don't need to use the drones, but it's those circumstances like here you can see on the picture with, you had a landslide, had a pipeline going through it, and it compromised the pipe, and we had a spill. It gives us another advantage to be able to get up in the air, to look at it, to see the area of extent of damage. Also, too, if we're first responding to it and it's going down some, tough topography, we're able to get in the drone and kind of follow it and see where it's going, and then make the determination if, once we know where it's at, if we need to walk it. Like I stated before, it's just another advantage we have with the drones to be able to get out to fly. Like I said, with accessibility issues, rough terrain, and all that kind of stuff. Here's another example that we used it for on a pipeline spill. It's obviously pretty flat territory there. You're kind of wondering why we fly it, but you can walk up to those track hose and look inside what they're digging up and remediating off of this pipeline spill. But to get an actual aerial view of it just gives the overall extent and just kind of shows you kind of the advantages that drone can give to you as far as if you're flying over it. Maybe they missed something and you're able to point out something to where we have to take more samples and do some more remediation in a different spot. So it's just it's a great advantage as far as for, the extreme spills, not the ones that are on locations, to be able to get out and fly the drone. And also, it also can help with spotting spills that haven't been reported yet or the operator doesn't know about, especially in that flooding scenario. If we're flying in that flooding scenario and then we see where ice chunk has hit a wellhead or hit a tank and burst it open, we're able to notify the operator to say, hey, you got a leak and we need to start remediating and looking at to cleaning it up. And then as far as, what we use them for, as far as for ranking them in order, as you guys can see here, reclamation, I would definitely say we probably use the drones more for reclamation than anything. We do, I got rank it as far as, reclamation number 1, and then pre-site inspections number 2, and then probably spills number 3. Production is a short right behind it, but number 4. So, like I said, it saves us a lot of time with doing reclamation inspections. Sites that we've already walked before, where it's been in reclamation status for a while, we can just get out and fly it, be done in 15 minutes versus, driving out. If you can get out to the location by driving onto like you can see here, we did here, or if we have to walk a little bit ways to look at the site, it just saves us time, saves us, versus having to walk the entire site. It takes an hour to 30 minutes to do that, to where, we are in a drone, we take off the guy from the drone, we take off flying, and then you can take one picture and you can look at the location and see, well, this part might need some more remediation. We can see what's going on here. So it's a huge advantage that we can have, and it just speeds up the process of reclamation sites, looking at reclamation sites. And obviously here in North Dakota, we look at most of our reclamation sites during the summertime, during the growing season. So here's another example of a site that was reclaimed in 2006 and we flew it in 2018. Looks really good. Again, it saves us time having to walk in on that lease road there that you see in the bottom of the corner of your screen. And, you kind of look at there, it's just kind of centered to the left. Looks like there's some straw wattles set up there, maybe trying to prevent some erosion. And, looking at stuff there just to the right of it, looks like there might be some susceptible stuff there as far as for maybe there's some more damage there from either erosion or a spot where we have some spots we need to remediate. So in this scenario, you can just take off with the drone, fly a little bit closer, get a closer look at, take a picture, fly back, and then head on to your next reclamation site. Here's another reclamation site that we flew in August of 2017. This was drilled in 2010 and reclaimed in 2011. So it's been 7 years or 6 years since we've reclaimed it. Obviously here it's in the summertime, but obviously it needs some more work done on this one. And so it allows us to be less invasive to this guy's farmer's field. And versus this, if we didn't have it, we have to walk through it, make a trail through it, and damage their crop. With that being said, you know, these past few slides, I've been talking a lot about how efficient the drone is as far as for what we're using for with our inspections. Like I just said, it's less invasive when inspecting cropland. We're able to double the number of reclamation inspections we can do in a day. Now there are some, you know, situations where we're not able to fly the drone because of the visual line of sight. We have sites in North Dakota to where we have, you know, 3 mile long lease roads off the main road. So if you're going to fly, you have to walk in with the drone, you know, probably 2.5, 2 3/4 miles to get to that site to be able to fly it, to stay within visual line of sight. So, but even then, that still saves us time, because then by the time we walk there, you're not walking the whole entire site and looking at everything. You can get to that point to where you're still in the line of sight, fly the drone, take a few pictures, bring it back, land it, and you're on your way. Also, it's as far as, you know, accessibility issues, it allows access to sites or areas that have those issues. You know, it saves us with that safety concerns as far as, you know, slips and falls, like on that first pre-site inspection that we had. You know, I one pre-site inspection that I did last year. We had to walk in about 2.5 miles to get to the site. So, but the site itself is really rough terrain, and if I had to do that by myself, just walking around, you know, we do have those concerns as far as for safety. And plus, it would have taken probably, you know, 2-3 hours to do a full inspection, versus when I just walk out there, get the drone in there, fly it, take pictures. It's very helpful. And again, this reiterating, it's just another point of view that wasn't available before unless we hired planes. So it also allows us to save money to not have to pay to fly in an airplane. Talking with the Geological Survey here in North Dakota, since they've had it a year longer than we have. Since they have had it, they've done 92 flights, taken over 18,000 pictures. They've, you know, helped us out. They've helped the highway department out with landslides. And now I know for efficiency wise, they wouldn't have hired a plane 92 times to go out. So maybe if they hired it 30 times to go out to be more efficient to take sites off, you take that times a couple grand, you know, they're saving quite a bit of money by using the drones. And of course, as always, there's inefficiencies with it. Now that it all just depends on how and what you guys, how your guys' state or province is looking at setting up the program. For example, like for us, you know, each inspector, we all have our normal duties, our week-to-week duties. And when we get a request to fly, it's just an added duty to us. So it just takes more time to pre-plan and all that kind of stuff. So it takes away from our normal job duties. Now, if you guys set up a program to where you hired somebody or someone in your agency just switched over and all of their time and effort was put into the drone, then this wouldn't be an inefficiency. This would be pretty much their job. So just be expected that they would have to do that. So, but for in our case, and for the inefficiency, you know, pre-flight planning, you know, we're setting up policies and procedures, what we have to do before we fly. You know, like I stated before, you got to look at the weather conditions you're looking at to make sure temperature's fine. We don't have any like rainy events, any inclement weather coming, or possibly that, making sure the wind is in the operating range, which usually between 10 and 15 or 10 to 20 miles an hour is okay to operate the drone. And if anyone's been to North Dakota, it's windy here a lot. So sometimes it might be a while before you can get out and fly. So, and then once you find out where you're flying, you got to look at your sectional charts and look at to see what kind of restrictions that you may have in that area. Like I stated earlier, most of the stuff that's in our oil field here in Western North Dakota is an unrestricted airspace, Class G. So we don't need to get pre-approval from air traffic control. We do try to get a hold of landowners, but we don't have to. So, and then once you kind of know where you're flying, you get all that done, you kind of have to locate as far as, you know, like I said, with that software, we don't have a lat and longitude on that software. So what I like to do is I like to pull up Google Earth and just kind of look at the land around the area where the pin is at as far as for the GPS locations, just to look for signs that when I get up in the air, when I'm there, it's more efficient. I can fly to the area and I can look and see what the topography looks like based on from the pictures, so I know I'm at that site where I need to take the pictures. Also, as far as for pre-flight planning, you have to, make an action for a flight path and where you want your pictures to be taken. With us, we kind of set up a drone request, and on that drone request from the permitting department, it states on there where they want the pictures taken. And most of the time, with the pre-site inspections for landslides, it's the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. So, and that's at 200 foot above ground level and 400 foot above ground level. So just for an example, when I get to location and I get to the site, I will fly to the north side of the location and aim south and make sure I have the whole site in view, and then I'll take a picture at 200 and 400. And by doing that, it makes it more efficient for the permitting team in our Bismarck office to make determinations whether or not we need to put more stipulations on that location. Otherwise, if we had 7 inspectors taking pictures and we didn't have a consistent way we're taking the pictures, Inspector A thinks this picture is good compared to Inspector B might take a different picture. And when we send those back to Bismarck, it would just be a lot of conversation back and forth between inspectors and the permitting people to figure out, what direction they're facing, why they took the picture in that way. So it's just more efficient in that way as far as making their determinations in Bismarck. And again, before you get out flying, you have to update your software. We all know with iPads and the Apple products, sometimes they come out with some really large updates that take a while to upgrade the software and the device. So you got to do that before you fly. Update the drone, update the software drone, and update the remote with the drone. And after that, you get all that done. Then you have to, I usually do take the equipment out and just do a quick check, just outside the office, take it up, fly it for just up to 10 feet, just to make sure everything is functioning properly. Also, there's other inefficiencies too, because when you go out and fly, you need to have a visual observer. So you have the remote pilot in command, who's obviously in charge of the drone, and then you have a visual observer, and their job is just to look at the drone while you're flying. So you're looking at the screen and they're looking at the drone. You might say, well, why do you need to have that? Well, because it has the safety features as far as, stopping you if within 4 foot if you get too close to an object. Well, when you're up in the air, there's, especially over here in North Dakota, there's larger birds like eagles, turkey vultures, and crows that will have never seen this drone before. It's the same size as them, and they'll sit there and they'll circle around the drone and just to kind of scope out what's making that noise in the air. So it's important to have that extra person there to observe while you're flying. So with that efficiency, you're using 2 people at a division versus 1, and you're taking time out of that individual's day as well. You got the setup and start up on site. You got this, you got to get the battery in there, boot it up, get your iPad booted up and get it going. And then once you get it going, if you have any issues with the drone while you're flying, you got to stop, you got to troubleshoot. And then if you can't troubleshoot it, then you have to go back to the office and either contact the manufacturer or do your troubleshooting there when you're connected to the internet to kind of see what's going on. And again, too, like I stated before, battery life is an issue with these, just depending on the conditions you're flying in. Like I said, they roughly last about 15 minutes, and we have 4 per each drone. So if you're flying large sites and you want to do multiple sites in a day, their drones do come with charging equipment to be able to charge it in your vehicle, but that only does 1 battery at a time. And depending on how far apart your sites are, you're probably only going to get 1 battery charged. So if you use all 4 of your batteries, more than likely you're not going to be able to fly the next site. Plus you have, with another, post-flight, you get the maintenance of the equipment, depending on what kind of policies you guys set up as far as for keeping a flight record and keeping a record of what kind of stuff you guys ran into when you're flying. You got that part on it, and then, charging the batteries. It's not just throwing the batteries on the charger. You have to, especially here in North Dakota, we don't fly much during the winter at all. So we have to make sure to keep the batteries charged and also extend the life by throwing them on storage mode. And then if you keep them on storage mode for a while, you have to charge them back up. And that's all in the manual as far as for battery life and being able to keep them up. So that all just takes extra time out of our days and our normal duties, week-to-week duties. Looking back at the challenges and surprises that we've noticed in the past 2 years since we've operated the drones, talking with Cody Vanderbush, the guy who's the lead of our drone program out of Bismarck, it's just, like I said before, it's technology upgrading, advancing so quick. So we bought these 2 years ago, and then since then they're no longer in production. So these drones are going to start becoming obsolete. So when are those upgrades going to stop upgrading for the software? So we got to look at, our next biennium, looking for a budget to maybe having to purchase more drones. Also, we got to look at too, do we need to go more advanced so that way they last a little bit longer? Because the theory behind there is you get more advanced, they're not going to become as obsolete as fast as the ones that just do like the ones we bought, which is the megapixel with the camera and the video options on it. So, but then when you get more advanced, you got the additional costs in there. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen drones costing the tens of thousands of dollars. So like I stated, we have one in every field office. So if we bought a drone for $30,000, I mean, that's a lot of money to invest into drones for each office. Plus two, the challenges starting up, we had several meetings with the software because like I said, it was just a basic program that just did the basic functions of the drone. So looking at different software, we did try, like I said, we did download another software by DJI, but I fully 100% believe that software was the cause for that malfunction of the drone not coming back to home and landing and crashing. So that's a challenge. Obviously, if you want to do more stuff and to make 3D images and stuff like that, software is going to cost money. It just all depends on your budget and what your department's able to purchase. Some of the surprises that we kind of talked about that we've had since we've implemented the program here over the couple years that we've had it. I've stated it before with the inefficiencies. It's the amount of time to set up the program. It's not just going and taking the exam and studying for the exam and going and taking it. The amount of time, as far as the 30 hours I put in for studying, there's only 2 spots in North Dakota to take the drone exam. That's in Minot and that's also in Fargo. And from Dickinson, Minot's 3 hours and Fargo's 4 hours. So we drove up to Minot to take the exam. So that's another day on top of it as well. But it's not just that seems kind of small, but it's just also researching your local laws. I know the Geological Survey guy and Cody Vanderbush spent a lot of time on the internet looking at different scenarios, different lawsuits that had taken place with drone usage and stuff like that. And then plus, spending on time with your state attorneys, researching the local laws to make sure you're able to launch your program. I know just if we had a regulation in North Dakota, I'd say that we had to contact landowners in North Dakota before we fly. That probably would have stopped the program right there because as I'm sure a lot of you guys are aware of, we have a lot of farms, a lot of corporate farms, a lot of large ranches up here. With some of that farmland, a lot of it's rented out, and some of those landowners don't live in North Dakota anymore. They live out of state, and the county records aren't up to date. So getting a hold of a landowner would assume a lot of our time, and it probably wouldn't have been feasible to be able to launch our drone program. Just on top of doing all that research on the local laws, it's figuring out the drone policies and procedures you want to implement in your program. So we spent, several days in meetings, a couple days in meetings figuring out what we're going to use them for, the benefits, different software programs, the policies and the procedures, where to store the photographs, because all that stuff is accessible by the public. So if someone wanted to request those photos, we have to be able to store those and not delete them. So that way we can release them out to the person who is requesting the photographs. So like I went over before, those pre-flight, post-flight maintenance programs, that it all took a lot of time and a lot of man hours to be able to set up. And like I stated, depending on how you guys want to set up your program, for us, it was just, from what I've seen, it's just extra time on top of the inspectors that we have on normal duties to go out and fly the drone. Future uses in North Dakota, I can definitely see our North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality using the putting a flare camera on a drone and looking for fugitive emissions. I don't think they do that now, but I heard maybe they do. So it would speed up their inspections themselves, looking on oil and gas sites for fugitive emissions. it's flat and straight here in most of North Dakota and some of the oil fields. So you may have a 5 mile long stretch of road that has 20 sites on it. And, you'd be able to just get up off the ground with the drone and be able to look at 3 or 4 sites before having to move it to a different location. So that would speed up their process as far as looking for fugitive emissions. As far as for the North Dakota Oil and Gas Division, I could foresee us maybe using it for pipeline right-of-ways for our pipeline program, putting on a camera on a drone and flying the right-of-way and looking at ground temperature. If the ground temperature's ranging from 65 to 75 degrees on the right-of-way and you get to a spot that's showing it's 100 and 110 degrees, you can alert the operator and say, hey, you may have a leak here. Let's do some investigation. Also, some of the other research I looked at as far as for other programs used with drones is a different type of camera that looks at plant growth and health using that visible atmospherically resistant index or the near infrared program. So what that is looking at is basically how light reflects off a plant. And then based on what shows up on the color scheme you have on your camera, you're able to tell if the plant's healthy, how it's growing and stuff like that. Would that be something feasible for us to use out on reclamation sites? I mean, you'd have to look at how efficient it would be because you'd have to send us off to schooling to be able to understand what the program's telling you as far as the spectrometer, as far as for all the colors. And then on top of that, when we fly reclamation sites now, we can pretty much tell if, we know where the tanks are at and there's not a whole lot growing there. We know we need to do some more remediation. So it's an option we could possibly use, but I don't see us for using that technology here in the future, or now or in the future. Also, what would really help launch our program even more is our governor is a former Microsoft guy, sold this company to Microsoft, and he's really been pushing technology on all our departments in North Dakota. And one thing he's really been pushing is the use of drones. And we are actually Cody Vanderbush is actually helping out looking at a program to where we don't have to fly inside the visual line of sight. So where we could actually go beyond the visual line of sight and still be able to fly and still be legal. And by doing that, that would just open up so much more stuff and so much more efficiencies as far as for reclamation inspections, spills, so where we don't have to keep following the spill and getting up and flying the drone. So to be able to do that would open up a whole new area of efficiency for us. And developing that program, that from what I understand from what Cody has told me, they're looking at using georeferencing, radar, or radio to be able to locate other drones in the area that you're at. So you'd open up the program, you'd be able to see all the other drones in the area where you're flying, and you'd be able to go outside your visual line of sight and conduct your business. So with that, I just want to thank all you guys for joining this webinar on drone use in North Dakota. I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope I answered or can answer most of your questions. If I can't answer your questions, maybe I can get a contact info from you guys and be able to do some more research, talk with some of my superiors and see and get back to you on those questions. So with that, I will take some questions. I'll look here at all right. Okay, I see there's lots of questions here. John, were you going to remediate all these questions and ask them to me, or how do you want me to deal with that?
I can read one here. Do you plan on using drones for leak detection inspections?
That's a possibility that we could use them for. As far as getting on location, I mean, a lot of that stuff we look at leaks and stuff right now when we go on location and do our normal inspection. And as far as leak detection inspections, as far as fugitive emissions, we do have regulations in place that they can't do that they have to fix it. So it would be an additional cost. Could I see us using it? Potentially. But for right now, if we're on location and we hear it, we call the operator and have them take care of it. I also see here from Alabama Oil and Gas, a question about what kind of insurance would be needed for the drones. We don't have insurance on the drones just for the sheer fact because they're not expensive. I do know some of an environmental department with an operator here just in Dickinson has a drone that overall cost with the equipment they have, it was over $30,000. And I don't know what type of insurance they have, but I do know they did have issues that they did crash it, and thankfully they had the insurance because it was able to refund them for all that, for basically the cost of the drone and all the equipment they had onto it. So it just all depends on the cost, how expensive you go into using it, what type of equipment you have onto it. That's something you'd probably have to do like a business insurance policy.
Here's another one, Alan. Can the drone be used in nighttime or low light conditions?
Not at nighttime. Nope. The FAA restricts you to use it before at night. You can operate it 30 minutes before sunrise and 30 minutes after sundown. But that's what you have as far as for by the regulations, Part 107. And then also I see here the same from Alabama about 2 people on site when flying drones. No, you don't need the visual observer does not have to be licensed to fly the drones. And actually the regulation actually allows you, if that person wanted to fly the drone, he could, as long as the remote pilot command is right there next to him to take over if he needed to, he or she needed to.
Here's another one. Have your drone FLIR inspections found leaks that an inspector on the ground wouldn't see?
We don't operate the flare cameras. That's the air quality division that goes out and sees that. I mean, definitely, if we had one, we would see fugitive emissions versus if we didn't. I've been on a location before when the operator showed up, their environmental lady showed up with the flare camera, a handheld flare camera, and I had just walked through the battery, did my inspections. I didn't hear any leaks above me on the thief hatches, and we went and looked at the flare camera, and there was almost every single take had a leak. So definitely, if we implemented that technology within our division, we probably would, or not probably, we would.
Hi, Alan. John again. Our technology is great. So thank you for to Dana and you for the Q&A here. I'd like to follow up on a question that was asked that Dana posed to you from someone about 2 people being on site. Can you use a second person to extend your line of sight? Can you pass off from you to for that?
That is a very good question. They didn't, in the regulations, it doesn't specify. I'd have to go back and look again, but that might be something I'd have to go back and relook at. Trying to remember if the regulations state if you can or cannot do that, or if you have to be within, obviously. No, I'd have to do some research on that. If you want, John, if you want to get a contact info, I can do some more research on that today and kind of look to see. I'd have to go back and look at the regulations again on that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. You know what, that's the benefit of having this group on here that has some experience as well. So there are a couple folks in here that says that FAA allows what they're calling daisy chaining. So perhaps that is. Okay, that's interesting. But thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. Hey, and I may have missed this, but does your Division of Mineral Resources have any concerns about data security running the DJI software. And I think it goes to another question. I don't know it was asked yet, but are you do you use third-party software to prevent, and I'm assuming maybe it does, being shipped to and archived in China?
We haven't used any third party. All that software we did download, it was from DJI. When we download it, I don't think there's any disclaimers on there saying they can use that information and send it to China, for example. That's a very good question that, you know, as soon as we get back with the pictures, I mean, we take them off the drone, off the card, put them in our database on our server, and we delete them off the card. Now that software does save your flight path and stuff like that, and some videos on the software itself, but you could probably delete those and wouldn't have to worry about it. But I would have to get back to you on that one as well, as far as, you know, if we were to download a separate software, as far as for that stuff getting leaked out somewhere we didn't want it to.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Hey, and I'm going to interrupt the Q&A here for a minute, Alan. We're getting near the end of time for that we've allocated for today, and Dana is going to put up 3 really quick poll questions, and we'd ask for all of you that are out there participating today and joining in with us, if you would just take a quick moment to complete the poll as we move to the next question. We really do use this information to help us become better and provide information that you'll find you know, good in your job, and something that you'll consider as good professional development information. So if you'd all take a moment and answer these polls, we'd appreciate it. Just 3 questions. Thanks, Dana, for doing that. And I'll go back to Alan. I don't know if I've missed a question in there, and I'll go back to either you or Dana to see if I have missed any that have not been answered here yet. Did you get a chance to answer the leak detection question?
Yes.
Okay, good enough.
Another question I saw was, will you apply for a BVLOS waiver to address VLOS issues?
I just saw that too, and that's actually something that, you know, we've not applied for, but, you know, depending on, that's something we could look at doing as far as that. But like I stated with that program, if that does get developed here in North Dakota, I mean, we wouldn't have to anymore. That would be something we'd be able to do on a regular basis. You know, depending, since we've never done it, it just depends on how long it takes for that waiver to get approved and stuff like that. Is it, maybe that person who asked the question knows more about it than we do, or more than what I do, but you know, do you have to apply for it every single time? Do you have to, is there a grace period or a period of time that you're able to use it? It would probably add, as far as for us being able to apply for that, since how we have it set up as far as the inspectors going out and doing it, would probably add a lot. Don't know that, but it probably would add some more time on there. And it's something we could look into.
Thanks, Alan. Are there any outstanding questions before we close up for today? Yes, and this is being recorded, and we'll have it posted within, maybe I'm sticking my neck out here, in the next week to 10 days. It'll be on our TOPCORP and Penn State websites. Alan, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for the time and your obvious considerable expertise for today's program. I'd like to thank everyone for participating. TOPCORP will be providing another professional development webinar, and you should receive a notice of that within the next several weeks, where we'll be announcing the time and the topic. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll look forward to seeing you all again In the meantime, if you folks have any subject or topic you'd like to see presented, you'd like to send it off to us, please do that. We're always looking for things that might be of particular interest to you all. Alan, thanks again for all you've done to prepare and be with us today, and to our audience for participating today. We hope you all have a safe day.
Thanks. And again, thanks for TopCorp for letting me talk, and everyone for joining. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
We enjoyed it, Alan. Thank you. And thanks to all the participants.